Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Okay, this is a continuation from the video yesterday where we talked about making our own T-bolts. Now, I will tell you, I've looked out there yesterday afternoon and this morning. I have not been able to find anybody else that uses these sliding T-nuts and threaded rod to make their own T-nuts. And nobody. I've seen them do it with carriage bolts and everything else. But that's first. I've never seen anybody do it that, which is surprising to me. These are great little things to keep in your shop. And if you don't have a packet of these in your shop, you're missing out on things that you can do. So now that you know how to make the T-bolt with this, and as I'm showing you today, you can use these to actually make wood knobs, although it's not my first choice for doing wood knobs. So to make wood knobs, you only need one piece of hardware, and that's metal threads of some kind. And there's lots of choices, like right here. Let's see. What do we got here? Where is that insert? Oh, there it is. For example, you have these little brass inserts. You could use one of those. I could very easily take a knob like this, have it drilled out, and just insert that into there. Now, if you're going to do this, you want to start with your block being more this size so that that thing doesn't split your wood out. When you get down to something thin like this, putting that in there stresses it, and it'll cause it to split a lot easier than it would if you keep your block complete like this to begin with. So, also, if you're going to use those inserts, you go to screw that in, you have lots of strength this way, but put this in a vise or put a clamp on here this way to keep this thing from splitting this way, because that's the way this wood would tend to split. If it was going to split, it's not going to split this way. It's going to split this way. So make sure you vise that in somehow when you use these inserts. I use these, but I don't use them to make knobs and stuff, because to me, these take a lot of work to get them in and get them in straight. It's a challenge. Can you do it? Yeah, I use them, but they definitely are not my first choice to make something, especially knobs. You can also, as you saw me do once before, you can use cross dowels. These are really great. Now, everything I'll show you here is all in 1/4 20 TPI, because that's what I keep in the shop. Everything that has to do with 1/4 20, all these different things, that's the size I always get so that I always have something compatible in size. There's lots of other sizes, but I find this one I can use for 99% of what I would possibly do. So pick a size, and all this hardware you want to get in only one size. Don't buy all the different sizes of it. You'll spend tons of money. These are probably a little more expensive than the sliding T-nut or the, you could actually even do this with a regular nut. But the cross dowel is a good way of doing it. In fact, I used it to do this one. If you remember, I drilled my hole this way, and that's a dead hole. I didn't go all the way through, because I wanted to leave the top closed. And then I drilled part way up a hole this way for this to fit into, a 3/8 hole. It's actually a 64th over 3/8. So if you drill that to the exact size that this is, but using a micrometer to measure it, and get it in there so you have to tap it in place, that's the best way to put that in there. Then you only have to put a little epoxy around the outside here, and that'll help hold that in place. Make sure you're lined up for your threads, because this thing can turn on you. So make sure your thread is perfectly lined up so that when you put your dowel on there, you got to make sure that this is perfectly straight across there. This one is, even if it doesn't look like it on camera. Sometimes the camera will fool you. But this one is perfectly straight. So you got to make sure this thing is turned, because if you have it turned a little bit, then that'll make this thing go off center. So other than that, this is a very easy way to make your knobs using this hardware here. Another one that you can use that I find common is like, and these are the ones I've been focusing on the last couple of videos, is these sliding T-nuts. Now, I did find a version of these at 21 cents a piece. They were made of aluminum, and that's kind of intriguing. I don't know whether I'll buy some of those or not. You got to buy at least 50 to order them. If you're interested, let me know, and I'll leave a link in the description. to where you can get these. I think Global Industry is one of the places where you can get these. So if you do a search on that, the number 3382. If you put 3382, slide in economy knob, you will find, do a search on that, you should find Global Industry pop up with their part number of what that is, so that you can go see it. And I think there's one other place that also makes them. But if you do a search on that, you can find these. And so you can get these as cheap as 21 cents. Now, I've been paying, I think I paid about 40 cents a piece for these. The cheapest I can find these things is really around 31 cents in steel. Stainless steel, of course, is probably up around 70 cents a piece, which is what these are. These are stainless steel. I think I prefer the regular steel ones. But again, that's just a matter of choice. And if it's just money thing, that's about as low as you're going to pay for these. This is a good alternative. When you do one of these, what you have to do is you take your block of wood that you're going to put this embedded in and put it into your wood. You drill your hole so that this, a round hole, this is a 3/4 inch, or it's 13/16. So I have a 3/4 inch hole here, so this doesn't fit in the hole. If you oblong the hole just slightly, then this fits in there just perfect. So I can put this in there, put a screw in there from the other side to pull it down tight in whatever position I want it, make sure everything is straight, and then drop a little CA glue in there and there and let it dry. And then all you have to do when you get done is put a cover back over the top of it, and you have an enclosed nut. That's what I did with some of these, is I used these. This is not my first choice, but this is a great alternative, and the price is slightly higher. Probably the least expensive way you can do it. And we might as well talk about that while we're here. The least expensive way you can do it is simply with a regular hexagon-shaped nut or bolt. You can take a regular bolt and use that for the male knobs, like I did here. That's what it used to be. That's a bolt. That's a bolt in the knob to give me a male wood knob. And this one is just the nut. Now, you can use these, and like I said, this is probably the cheapest way you can make your knobs of all the hardware. But if you're going to do it this way, watch out, because one thing I will tell you about this, these, of all the different methods here, I showed you the different ways that you can put that in. If you get failure of the nut turning in the hole, this is the culprit right here. These two will not hold near as strong in the hole as it does as any of the others will, for not spinning. And that's because it's so small. Now, don't get me wrong. If I put a nut that size in a hole with some epoxy, no, it's not going to go anywhere. But the smaller the nut, the more likely it could break free and start spinning in the wood hole. And they have done it to me. So, remember, you can do it this is the cheapest, probably one of the easiest ways to do it, but it's also the weakest way. And if I'm going to use this, I tend to think I might as well just do it in wood threads instead, which I also have done. I've taken it, drilled it out to a 3/16, tap it out to a 1/4-20 with my tap, and use that, and it works fine. Especially if you put a little crazy glue inside the hole, let that cure, and then run your tap in there and do that once or twice. You get a nice firm thread in there of wood, and as far as I'm concerned, that would work better than this does even. But you can do this if you want. Just be prepared for the possibility of it failing by spinning in the hole. And if you bury it that inside like this, then you can't even fix it later. You'll have to take it all apart to even fix it. So just beware. This is the cheapest, probably one of the easiest ones to make, but it's also the most likely to fail. My one of choice, which I know you've all been waiting to hear this one, right? My one for choice actually is the regular 3-prong Tnut. This here is probably the easiest to use, and you can make this work in almost any of these type of knobs that I've made here. I can use this, and I'm very confident that I won't get any failure from it when I do it too. The hole itself, the washer size, that's basically a 3/4 inch diameter. So again, if I take my 3/4 inch diameter hole that I drilled here, you can see this fits in there nice and snug. Tight, as a matter of fact. But it goes right in. So you would drill a 3/4 inch hole. Then you take this thing and you drop it down in the hole and shove it down in there and hammer it in so you blow the surface, and you now have one in there. Drop a couple drops of CA glue, put a cap on it, and this thing is good to go. This is the one that I prefer making over any of them. So if you're going to make knobs, as far as the hardware, I keep plenty of these on hand. Now, also, as a note, this stem here, the part that is the actual threads, that comes in 2 different lengths that I'm aware of. There's this length, which is, I believe it's 7/16. Let's look. What is that? 5/8. This is 5/8 of an inch, I think, is what you'll find it is. Now, they also make one that's shorter. It's more like 3/8 of an inch height. So it's a little shorty stem. Those work real good, and that's all you really need. These are better, obviously, but if you're going to make a wing nut like this, then obviously this long stem won't work near as well as the shorty stem in this style. On every other kind of nut that I've done, this is fine. So if you keep only these on hand, you can make nuts. You just be hard pressed to make one that looks like this. So, and this is one of my favorite wing nuts that I make from that, embedding that in. And actually this one I did using a slide-in Tnut rather than one of these. But you could do it with any, actually you can make something like this with any of them. It just would change the dimensions of it when you got done. So, the Tnut by far is the best. So let's talk about making, mass producing. And also, let's talk about first, real quick, let's talk about generic knobs. Your generic knob, I made all these different knobs here. Here's a good example. Got all these different knobs. This is male. This is female knob. This is a female knob. But this one, I call my generic one because I have it pre-drilled and shaped and ready to go. All I have to do is decide what kind of one in there. Drop that in, put some 2-part epoxy on there, which if you're going to use a hex head bolt, use 2-part epoxy, not CA glue, because CA glue definitely will fail on you. The epoxy has a much better chance of not failing. So, but I could put that in there, and now all of a sudden it's no longer generic, it's now a male wood knob. So, when I made all of these, I made them all generic. And at this point, I look at all the different knobs, and I still got a bunch of them. I must have made about 20 of these in one batch. And this is the only one left that's still generic. All the rest I've put in use at one time or another. So these I kind of robbed off of my legacy machine so I can kind of show you what's going on here. Plus, I had to borrow them, I guess you'd say, because I've been using some of these on my new project on the OTB fence. Because that's what started all this. Is I realized that, oh my gosh, I don't have near enough knobs. So I wanted to go back and make some knobs. So might as well, I'll tell you how to do it while we're doing it. Because I've been making knobs for years and years. And I've made about every kind of knob and used every kind of hardware that you could think of, I think, at one time or another. So this is kind of where I'm at. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the best one to use. So now that we kind of established what a generic knob is, let's hone in on how to batch make it so that you can make a bunch of them at one time. So what I did is, for example, I took this piece of wood, and it's just a scrap piece of wood, and you think, well, yeah, probably just throw that away. But actually, I can get 4 knobs out of this without any problem. I took this, and I spaced these 2 1/4 inches apart, because that's kind of what fit in there. This is where I'm going to drill the hole. I drew a line down the center, and then I marked it off every 2 1/4 inches. So it's 2 1/4 here. So when I'm done, I'll take this and cut it here, here, and here. And that'll give me 4 blocks that look like this with the hole in them. So once I've done that, and I got the hole in them, like I do, let me do this one. And I have the hole in them like this. And next thing you want to do is then taper all of those holes. Put a taper on them so that later on you'll thank yourself for doing that, because now is the time to do it. And go ahead and put a bevel in all your holes on both ends. That way, if you have to oversize the hole later, the drill bit will fit in there rather than trying to wander. It'll actually fit in that hole nicely because it's beveled. Once you've done that, then I cut off the strip about a 1/4 inch thick or so. Doesn't matter what size exactly. And then you take that piece and you drill a shallow hole. In this case, I would drill a 3/4 hole centered over this hole. That is a challenge to do. So probably if I was going to use this type of the regular 3-prong T-nut, I would not drill this hole at first. I would mark it out. I would pull my piece off. Then I would drill my shallow hole first, where I'd do my layout on this part. Put my shallow hole in first. That would leave a dimple in the center for you to be able to drill the 5/16 hole later. And then drill the holes out that way. And then come back and take the piece that you cut off, this one here, line it up and just mark for the holes and drill these holes separately. Then, to make this into a generic set of knobs, I would just put in my insert in here, glue this back on, and you end up with this. And then I start cutting it into generic blocks. So this is a generic block, and you can make any kind of knob you want out of this. In fact, I've made a couple of examples here. Here's one. This knob was actually made from 4 blocks of wood. This is one of those blocks. That was another one of these I had. I had 4 of these in all at one time. And one of them I cut up into small blocks already. This is one of the knobs I made from that block that looks identical to this. So, and it's not hard. I went from this to this in under 5 minutes using nothing more than my bandsaw and my belt sander. But you can make any shape you want on these. Now, this is where you got to put your OTB hat on, because now you got this ugly knob. And honestly, I could use this knob just like this. This thing actually functions as a knob right now. So if you want, start using it as a knob. I know I say I like ugly more than pretty. That's probably taking it to the extreme. I would slim it down, at least streamline it. But you can actually turn this into any shape. Like I said, I took one of these and turned it into that. That's where this knob came from. But that's not the only thing I did with it. If you think outside the box, I could also make this knob. Here's my threaded nut right in here. So if I turn this upside down, you can see where I can get this knob out of this block now. I could also get this knob out, well, a little shorter, but I could get this knob out of there if I want. Or this knob. Or even that knob. I could get that knob out of there if I wanted to. If I was going to do this knob, I would just do this from 3/4 inch dowel. Because that's all this is that's one of those 3-prong T-nuts. I broke the tines off of it. And I drilled the hole to be exact size for that to fit in there snugly. Put some 2-part epoxy and tap that into place. After it's set up and dried, I ground the outside edge away and beveled it so none of the metal is touching to the outside edge. And as you can see, a 3/4 fits into the 3/4 hole with the metal. And that is now my holding power. Now, I will tell you, this is actually very strong, because I can take this with the threaded nut here, I can take and put it on this way, and when I tighten this down, that's going to pull this knob into it. But also, if I have a real short one and I want to get this onto the threads down here where I only have a couple threads showing, I can put this on this way and put it on there. And when this makes contact against the other surface, the only pulling is on metal to metal between the threads and the washer area of this T-nut. The wood never gets under stress pulling it, well, this would pull off of there. So you can use this type of knob in either direction as you need fit. I have some of these around, and these actually are very handy to fit into a lot of different things that you wouldn't think of. And it's just 3/4 inch dowel that I centered, drilled it, and added this piece to it. So these are easy to make. Again, making it from the 3-prong T-knob is the best way. So I keep lots of these around because I'm always making something that you have to fasten down. What else can you make with it? This is not a block of wood. This is a blank canvas for anybody out there that wants to be an artist. Just imagine. Let me show you. I decided that as a woodworker, one thing that I have that I don't think anybody else has out there in the wood shop is their own personalized monogram wood knobs. So, but these I made from 2 of these blocks, as you can see. My bolt goes down through here and screws into the threaded nut down in here. This one, the threaded nut's right here, and it screws down into there. I could take the bolt out and make it a female knob if I want. But now I have my own personalized wood knobs. So the sky's the limit what you can do with this. Just get yourself your OTB hat, put it on, get your cup of coffee, sit down and think about it for a minute, and you can create something that you want. Just imagine for a minute, if I was to take this and chuck it up into a lathe, what I could turn that into that way. So you can really do anything you want. Also, why couldn't you take this and if you've seen them taking a little small piece of log, something that's like 2 inches in diameter to 4 inches in diameter, and they carve in those little faces on them, the spirit, the wood spirits, I think they call them, or something like that. Anyway, you imagine making a set of knobs that had all those faces carved into them. How cool would that set of knobs be? I actually think that a person wants to, they could take these knobs, make them like this, and when they get ready, they can take a set of them, make a whole set of knobs identical, and you could actually make a living making nothing but knobs and selling knobs and wood hinges. And you make them from scratch yourself, and I've shown you how to do both. I think a person could actually, I could probably put together a good business model, business plan to do something like that and sell nothing but knobs and wood hinges. I think that would be very cool, and I think a person could actually have a nice little business going doing that if they wanted to. So just a thought. Who knows? I may do that. I had gotten out of doing things for money a long time ago when I retired. For the first time since then, I am now tempted to have something to do that. So how do you make these blocks? Well, easily, the way I found to make it is I just take this block here is a 2x4, is all it is. And I drilled my holes through. And then I took and I drilled my shallow recess here because you don't need to be too deep if you're using the 3-prong one. And then I pounded them in, and then I took a piece of wood and glued it. I drilled these holes, lined it up, marked them, and drilled them. So when I set this on there, this one matches. This one matches to this side to line up to the holes. So as soon as I put the T-nuts in there and I glue this down, this thing is ready to come apart. Now then, I can then take it, cut it in half this way, and cut it into 3 this way, and I'll end up with 8 little knobs that are about this size. These would be 2 inch by 2 inch when I'm done, which is what I'm going to do. But I could very easily, instead of putting another knob here, I could have drilled that hole in only a certain distance, made a blind hole, and I could easily then put these on the lathe and make myself a nice set of wood knobs that are round. So there's so many different ways you can carve on this to do something with it. You can mount it in a lathe and do with it, or just freehand cut it on the bandsaw. The sky's the limit. Now, as far as the little spacer, you notice how some of them have this little stem on it, and that's kind of nice at times to have that. A lot of times I'll just throw a little washer on there with this. But what I have also found that instead of throwing washers on these, I take my 3/4 inch dowel and I drill a hole in the center. I take little short pieces of it, set up my drill press to make sure I can get a centered hole, and I drill a hole in a whole bunch of these, and then I cut it into little pieces like this. That's what this one is right here, is exactly what this is, only shorter. And I took, and all I did was take it and I glued it to the bottom like that, and then it made it into one with a stem. So it's easy to make the look of this look different. You don't have to recess this hole. As long as it's glued to the surface, the only stress put on that that joint right there is compression. So as long as that's compressed together when you glue it together, that'll never come apart. There is no stress on that really to speak of to make that thing come off. I've never had that one fail. I've used this dozens upon dozens of times, and ones like this around the shop. This works fine. So it makes it quick and easy to add this stem by making some of this ahead of time and just keep them in the drawer with your knobs, so that if you got to go from something like that to something like that, or this to this, it's easy enough to do. So keep in mind that you also want to do something like this. So I think that's it, everything I've got to do for knobs. Oh, so just so you know, I'm going to take these, and quickly and easily, I can take this and just like that, I can turn this into 8 knobs in just a few minutes. And I'll have here in the next few minutes, after glue up, I will have 8 more knobs. So if you want to batch make knobs, make them whatever shape you want. Or like I said, I could make just 4 knobs out of this and have nice, long, tall knobs. Imagine something like this with a wood face carving in them. That would be very cool. So, do them any way you want. I'm getting my knobs now stocked back up, so I can now go back to my other project, which I'm going to do. While we're talking about knobs and hardware, one more quick thing that you probably had never thought of. In all my repertoire of all this hardware that I keep in 1/4 inch, the most expensive piece of hardware of all of this stuff you've seen actually is this little fella right here. If you know what this is, it's threaded rod. It's threaded 1/4 20 threads all the way through. They call them a coupler. It's so that you can take 2 pieces of ready rod and join them together to make them one piece for some reason. Or maybe you have 2 pieces that you want to join together because it's going to turn. This is a coupler to be able to do that with, to adapt to a 1/4 20 threaded rod. These things are nice. They're handy to have around. I keep a couple around. These are expensive. And also, so I don't keep very many, and I run out of these all the time. But believe it or not, real quick, there's another way to do this. You can make something just like this that'll work just as well. And I think it would look better when you get done. All you have to do, so put your OTB hat back on. We're about to embark onto an OTB thought here, because I'm going to show you how you can make one of those real quick and easy. If I take this, which is one of these Tnuts, and the stem, and I take and I put something threaded in from this side. Now remember, that's 5/8 of an inch long. So I can screw this one in 5/16 of an inch, take this piece, screw this in 5/16 of an inch, and guess what? You have the makings of, do I have one of those? Yep, I do. Let me get one out. By the way, these prescription bottles, they're really handy to have. So anyway, so I have this here, and I screw it onto the one piece this way, screw this one on this way, and bring them together. And now you have a coupler. So all you have to do is take this over and grind away totally this flat washer area so that you're left with just this sleeve here. Get rid of this whole big washer area on the grinder, and you have an insert that you can make a coupler from. Then I could take this piece, put it between two, halfway into each, epoxied in, epoxy that together, and you have, or you really could just take one, drill the hole big enough, and then push that down out of to where it can't be seen down in there. And then you could use something like this, or like I did here. I've used this as a coupler temporarily, and this thing works fine even like this, because there's no stress on this wood to metal bond when I'm using this as a coupler again. The only stress there is inside of where the threaded area is. These two are pulling and tugging on each other, whatever, theoretically, but this piece of wood does not have any stress on it from any of that structure. So once you bond this sleeve inside of a piece of dowel, or anything, you can make any shape. It doesn't have to be a dowel. You could then take and be able to use it as some kind of coupler without any problem. So, and again, the sky's the limit. Instead of doing it this way, you could take something like this and make it hexagon shape. So it looked like a big nut going on there, and bring your pieces in. You have this big nut to do. It just depends on what you want to do. Put some artistic value to anything that you're making. But you can actually take these little Tnuts and make couplers too. Save yourself a little bit of money. Just a thought. I have done it before, and it is easy to do, and I've never had one fail if I use these instead of a regular coupler. I've never had a failure from it. So you could even do it in a long piece of dowel and put two of them in, one on each end, and bring your piece together that way. And as long as the contact between the wood and this is solid, there's no way that coupler would come apart either, even with two couplers on there instead of one. So if you need more thread for more stress, just design your piece accordingly and you won't have any problem. It'll be easy peasy to make your own couplers if that's what you want to do. And I don't know about you, but I think that's a better looking coupler myself than that. So food for thought. I'm sorry I went so long. I wanted to get this all done in this video. And I really wanted to show you my ideas about this while I was thinking about all this. So now we're done. We're done with knobs. I should have all the knobs I need by the end of the day, hopefully. So I can go back, because I have lots of things I want to show you on that OTB fence. So now we can go back and start making more accessories for that thing. The finger joint should come out pretty quick. So if you have any questions, any comments, any thoughts, leave them down below. If you learned something here, you like this video, hit that like button. Lets me know I'm doing the right thing. Most importantly, though, please come back again, because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you guys again soon.